This is a year 2000 Lexus RX300. This car is a frequent visitor to our shop because the owner wants it to run forever. They are in love with this car and they do not want to part with it at any cost. They're the original owner. We've already replaced the engine and the transmission and the engine control harness on this car on separate occasions. Today we're replacing the power steering rack and both power steering tubes or hoses, the high pressure hose and the return hose from the rack. In this video, I'm going to give you a quick high level overview. I'm not going to give you a detailed how-to, but I'm just going to give you some quick tips so that this job goes easier for you if you have to do it. Tip number one is you must remove the windshield wiper tray from the car. And on these Lexus RX300s, the tray has to be removed for just about any kind of engine work that you do. I'll do a separate video on how to remove the windshield wiper tray. It goes without saying that you must disconnect the tie rods from the knuckles. But on the driver's side shown here, I also disconnect the entire knuckle from the strut, and this helps to make a lot more room for gaining access to the rack and removing it and replacing it. Here I have the old rack with the old tubes in the front, and in the back I have the replacement rack, which is a rebuilt rack that we're using. The original racks are too expensive or just no longer available, really. I don't think you can get a new rack, original rack, anywhere. I want to show you a close-up of the correct routing for these hoses, because after you remove them, you might forget which one went where. So the high pressure hose is coming down from above and looping around and going back in on the side that would be toward the front of the car. And the return hose is coming out of here and running alongside the rack, and it has an attachment point on the passenger side. The important thing is that the return hose is toward the rear and up toward the top, and the high pressure hose from the power steering pump is toward the front and lower down. This high pressure hose is a real bear to snake in and out on the car. So I've already got it in place on the car. However, on the new rack, I'm pre-installing the return tube, and it's just going to go back in with the rack, and that way it's just less stuff to deal with. One thing of note here is with this high pressure hose, it sort of loops its way around the steering shaft. So even when you disconnect it, if you have the steering shaft connected to the steering column, then it'll be almost impossible to get this steering hose off, because it'll just be looped around the steering shaft that comes down right here, like so. Okay, so it's almost mandatory to disconnect the steering shaft from the steering rack, and that creates a whole set of problems of its own that I'll just mention briefly in passing. In principle, these steering shafts are splined and they're collapsible, and you can see where the splines of the intermediate shaft insert into the lower shaft right there. Now, in practice, these are frozen with corrosion, and they're basically impossible to collapse. So with the steering column collapsible part frozen, there is no room to push the U-joint off of the steering rack. But luckily, if you remove the bolts that will hold the steering rack bushing in place on the lower cradle, the engine cradle, this creates just enough play so that the spline can disengage from the U-joint. There's just enough room to do that. Another thing I'm going to mention to you is you pretty much have to disconnect the sway bar links from the struts, and that way you have some mobility with the sway bar and you can rotate it out of the way for the steering rack and its tubes to go in. You do this on both sides, of course. You disconnect the sway bar links on both sides. Don't forget these O-rings. These O-rings go on the very tip of the tubes where they insert into the rack, and these are absolutely crucial, so don't forget them. I see that this rubber cover that is on the original rack did not come with the rebuilt rack. I wonder why, but I'm just going to remove it and install it on the new rack. It just pushes right on. Another secret I'm going to tell you is this mounting hardware on the passenger side might not be at exactly the correct length. When the rebuilt rack comes from the factory, they just put it on there whatever way, but it's movable, as you can see, and if you just give it some gentle taps, it'll move into the correct position. So it's almost inevitable that when you're done, the steering wheel is going to be off kilter. The best way to adjust it is remove the airbag, as I've done here, then remove the center nut, and then get the wheels into a straight ahead position or as close as possible to straight ahead, and then pop the steering wheel back on. So this will get you close enough so that the alignment shop can finish the job without too much trouble.